She was. We have learned that she was back and forth throughout the trial and that she was leaning at many times towards taking the stand, and that yesterday when she had the meeting with defense attorneys, they basically talked her out of it and came to the decision together that that she wouldn't take the stand. It's really interesting trying to think about what her frame of mind is like right now, what she's actually thinking, because it's like looking at her throughout the trial, sometimes she's smiling. It's all very, very hard to understand. I talked to a woman named Anna LeBaron. Her dad was Irvin LeBaron, who was also an extremist Mormon cult leader, much like Chad Daybell. I asked her if she thinks that Lori actually still believes all of this cult stuff. Listen to what she told me. Based on what you know, what you went through with your dad, your mom, do you think that they still believe all of this?
Yes, I do believe they still believe it. And in my mind, like, my father, even, and other cult members of my father's that stood trial for things, for killing people that they had killed, believed that they would not have to answer to the law for what they had done. They believed that they would be, rescued from that by
maybe that's why Lori
powers.
is so. Maybe that's why she's smiling in court and laughing and all of that.
Yes, and that also might be part of mental illness. Like, she doesn't comprehend, like, there's a disconnect or dissociation from what's happening.
And there is sort of this thought that that Lori may still believe Chad is almost godlike and still believe everything that she believed in the cult. And that could be a reason why she didn't take the stand, why they didn't really put on a case, because in a sense, she may still be trying to actually protect Chad.
Right, because so many people, Brian, thought that's exactly what she would do, is turn on him. In fact, and people are still thinking that's what he's going to do to her when he goes on trial in a short time later. Let's bring in the founder of the Cult Education Institute, Rick Allen Ross. Rick, you just heard the Anna talking about her dad. Do you think that Lori, even as she's been in prison and jail awaiting trial all these years, still believes in whatever Chad was selling her?
Yes, I think she does. And I think that's probably why they didn't want to put her on the stand. She probably sees this as her martyrdom, her being a martyr and being persecuted for her beliefs, and that she will weather through it. And of course, Chad Daybell planted in her mind so many bizarre beliefs about her children, about the outside world. I think she still hangs on to the idea that these prophecies, these predictions will come true about doomsday, about the end of the world.
Even though the doomsday date is long past and the world is still here?
Elizabeth, there are Waco Davidians that have waited decades after David Koresh's prophecies failed and continue to believe that he is, in fact, Jesus, God, Messiah, and that he's coming back. I think there's a will to believe based on the emotional and psychological equity that you have in the group. Look at the alternative for Lori Vallow, to accept the fact that her children are dead for nothing, that she was complicit in their murders, and that she followed a man that is responsible for the demise of her family and the destruction of her life. Rather than accept that as reality, I think she still is in a kind of alternate universe, a fantasy that is much more comfortable for her than inhabiting the real world.
And Rick, I always wonder about this. Does Chad Daybell believe all this stuff that he's telling all these people? I mean, do the cult leaders really believe that, Brian's reporting earlier in the week was that, Chad and Lori Chad thought he was Jesus's brother, and that they had past lives where they walked with Jesus and were married to, I don't know, it's just crazy. And you just have to, I guess I always wonder in covering these stories, does Chad believe it? All this stuff he's telling Lori and his followers?
I really don't think so. I see Chad Daybell as a con man, a person who is deliberately leading people on for his own personal gain. He was after insurance money, he was after sex, and that's what motivated him. And he manipulated people to get what he wanted. Also, what I see is the typical profile of a psychopath. someone who doesn't have any sympathy and is really incapable of empathy. What kind of a human being can cast children as demonic and set about murdering them? A 7-year-old, a 17-year-old. I mean, this is a person who really has a lot in common with people like Keith Raniere, the leader of NXIVM, Charlie Manson and the Manson family, and so on. And listen, I dealt with many of these cult leaders, Keith Raniere, as you know, personally, and to a large extent, David Koresh over the years. And my experience with them is that they know that they're lying and that they deliberately manipulate people through deception and lies. And some of them may snap towards the end, as I believe that David Koresh. But I think that Chad Daybell is very aware of what he's doing. And I agree that he may be planning on throwing Lori Vallow under the bus.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.